Hey guys, David here with a beginner's guide to publications and subscriptions within Meteor. Now, publications and subscriptions are kind of the more confusing topics for a beginner. I remember when I first came into contact with them, I really had no idea what they were. But in this video, I'm going to share a very simple example that will show you why we use them and how to use them in a very basic way. This is one of those topics you're going to learn a lot more about in the coming weeks and months, so this video is far from a definitive guide, but I will push you in the right direction. So what we're going to do first is, of course, as always, create a new Meteor project. Meteor, create, publish, subscribe, go into that folder, and we open up that in Sublime Text. We go Meteor, publish, subscribe. Okay, what we're going to do, first up, delete everything, and then create a collection. We'll call this blog posts. We'll pretend we're making a blogging application, but we're not going to make really any features. Blog post, new meteor.collection, and then call it whatever you want. Save that. Then we'll just start up the local server, and we'll go down to Chrome, open that up. That should be running just fine. And then we can just open up the JavaScript console and we should be able to see that the blog posts collection is there, and it is fantastic. What we're going to do now is create a couple of documents, and these documents will essentially be blog posts, but we're just going to have two fields, and I will just show you what they are as we're creating it. So go blog post.insert. The first field will be title, so we just go this is a test title, whatever, doesn't really matter. Comma. The second field is going to be called draft, and this is going to be a Boolean value, so true or false. And this is a pretty common feature in blogging software. You write a post, save it as a draft, and it will remain a draft until you want to publish it for the masses. And in this case, we want one blog post that is a draft and one blog post that is not a draft. So the first one will be a draft, so go true, and that is the entirety of the document. It's not very fancy, there's no content or whatever, but it'll do for now. So just insert that, and then we can just insert another one, except this will be draft is false, and then let's have a different title just to make it a bit different. Hello world, enter. We have two blog posts, that's all we need. Then we just switch back to Sublime Text, and we're going to create a very simple interface where we list the blog posts. So to do that, we'll create a isClient conditional just to make sure all this code runs on the client, and we'll create a helper. It will be for just a hello template, and then we'll go post equals function, and we'll return all of the blog posts in that collection. So blog post.find, just like that. Anyway, so we'll save that file, we'll switch to the HTML, delete the content from the hello template, and then we just iterate through the post, so each post, and we'll print out the title. Close each block, we'll wrap this entire thing, make the entire thing a list, and make all the titles within list items. Save that, and that should show all the blog posts over in the browser, and as you can see, that is the case. But of course, at the moment, we are showing every single one of the blog posts and not just the published posts. So a very simple way to fix that, now that we have that draft boolean in our collection, in our documents, we can go back to the JavaScript file. Within the find function, we'll just make it so draft must equal false. We'll save that, and in the browser, it will only show posts that have the draft boolean set as false. There is, however, still a problem, and it's this problem that is basically the focus of this video. And basically, if we head back to the browser, and we go to the JavaScript console, and we go blog post.find.fetch, you'll see that every single blog post is returned, even the one that is the draft. So even something that is not published can still be accessed through the JavaScript console. Now, during development, this is not a big problem, but what happens when we deploy the application to the web? And what if we have all this content set as a draft and we don't want people seeing it, but what if they can just open up the JavaScript console and run this command and suddenly see every single piece of content? Maybe that in itself wouldn't be the end of the world, and of course not every single person would know how to do that, but it's still a security risk, especially when you're dealing with sensitive data. Like if you care about privacy in the absolute slightest bit, then just putting all our data out there is not a good approach. That of course begs the question though, why can we do this if it's not really safe, if it's not secure? And that's simply because it helps with development. It is actually very convenient during the development phase. We just have to take a few extra steps though before we release something to the world. And the first of those few extra steps is to actually remove a package from our Meteor application, from our project. And this package is called the autopublish package. And I'll show you how to get rid of it. You go meteor space remove autopublish. Now of course we never added this package to our project, it just comes included by default with every project. And it makes it very easy to navigate through all the data using the JavaScript console. But like I said, we're going to remove it, so hit enter, it's gone. And as you will see in the browser, what you should see is that our data is gone. And if we try to use the find and fetch functions in the JavaScript console, enter, nothing is returned. It basically seems like our Meteor MongoDB collection is just completely empty. That is not actually the case though. What is the case is the fact that we have to manually choose which data is going from the server to the client. So basically what data is specifically available to every single user. This is where it can get a bit confusing, but it does help to see it in practice. So what we're going to do is open up Sublime Text, or switch back to Sublime Text, and in the JavaScript file, we're going to create the isServer conditional. And then within here, we're going to create a publish function. And how we do this is to go meteor.publish. We give it a name, so I'll just call it the blog posts. This is just a way to reference it later. And then we pass through a function as the second argument, just like that. And then within this function, what we do is actually identical to this return statement up here. So we just copy and paste that, put it in our function, and save that file. And what's going on here is this publish function is basically transmitting this data. You can think of it as like transmitting this data into the ether, just sort of out there into the world. So all of this code is running on the server itself. It's not running within the browser, it's only running on the server. And the server is sending this particular data, so these blog posts where the draft field is set to false, and it's just sending it out there. And then what we can do is over within the isClient conditional, we go meteor.subscribe, and this is where we pass through the name that we just set a moment ago, and we go the blog posts. And that's all we do. That's the entirety of a subscribe function. And this subscribe function is basically catching the data that is sent from the server. So the server is transmitting the data with the publish function, and the client is catching the data with the subscribe function. So it's going to save that file, and as you'll see in the web browser, our data is back. But while this might seem like nothing is different from before, it's like we just took an extra step for the sake of it, that is not the case. Because if we use the find and fetch function in the console, we'll go enter, you'll notice that there's only one object being returned. And that one object just happens to be the post where the draft parameter is set to false, as we've defined here. And that's because the publish and subscribe functions make it possible to specify what data is available to users. And perhaps a good way to demonstrate this is even if we get rid of this parameter here, so even if we try to retrieve every single blog post from the collection within the helper function, it will still only retrieve the published posts. So there is no way for the user to access any data except for the data that we've chosen to make available. And therefore the application is far more secure than it would have been otherwise. Using this publish and subscribe model also has performance benefits, which I might cover in more detail in the future. But basically, if you're limiting the amount of data that's being passed around, everything's just going to load a bit faster, be less taxing on the server. In either case though, the security aspect is the main thing to wrap your head around. That's the main thing to concern yourself with. If it's not completely sinking in, don't worry, it is quite a confusing concept, but you'll keep coming back to it over the coming weeks and months, and I promise you will get it. At the very core though, we use publish and subscribe to choose what data is available to users, thereby allowing us to have a collection with all sorts of data in it, but not having that data exposed in ways we don't want it to be.